I just retired, now what? Finding purpose after work ends. You spent decades waking up at 6 a.m., brewing your coffee, driving through traffic, and doing your job with discipline. Then suddenly, it all stops. No morning rush, no colleagues, no calendar reminders, just a quiet house and a whole lot of time. You've just retired, but now what? Welcome back to Elderly Care, the channel where we explore health, happiness, and resilience in your golden years. If you've recently retired, or you're watching this for a parent or a loved one who has, stick around, because today we're diving deep into a topic that's rarely talked about but deeply felt. Loneliness. Purpose. The unexpected identity crisis that can follow retirement. And we're not just going to talk about the problem. We're going to explore how thousands of older adults are rediscovering meaning after work ends, and how you can, too. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're building a community here. One that believes life after 60 is not the end, but a whole new beginning. Let's talk about something most people don't bring up when it comes to retirement. From the outside, it sounds like a dream, doesn't it? No more 6 a.m. alarms. No more deadlines. No more sitting in traffic, eating a granola bar for breakfast in the car. Finally freedom. Time to travel, relax, or just catch up on sleep. And for a while, it is kind of magical. But here's the part no one really warns you about. After the excitement wears off, after the lunches, the send-off party, the welcome to the good life cards, a quiet starts to creep in. And that quiet can get real loud. Some mornings, you might wake up and wonder, now what? See, when we leave the workforce, we're not just walking away from a job. We're walking away from our daily rhythm, from the sense of purpose that comes from showing up, solving problems, being part of something bigger than ourselves. And without it, even the most independent, go-with-the-flow type can start to feel a little untethered. You might notice the phone rings less. You run into fewer people who know your name. There's less small talk, fewer inside jokes, fewer reasons to get out of the house. And slowly, almost without realizing it, you start to wonder, do I still matter? Now, let me say this, you are not alone in feeling that way. A 2022 study from the journal Aging and Society found that nearly 1 in 3 retirees experience loneliness or isolation within their first year after retiring. That's not a small number. And interestingly, it's often those who were the most socially active before retirement who feel the sting the hardest. Because when you're used to being surrounded by people, the sudden silence feels even sharper. But why does this happen? It all comes back to identity. Think about how often we describe ourselves by what we do. I'm a nurse. I'm in construction. I teach 3rd grade. I run a small business. There's pride in that. Belonging. It gives you a place in the world. A role to play. A sense of being needed. Then one day, it's gone. You're still the same person, smart, capable, caring, but that title? That nameplate on your desk? That's in a drawer now. And without it, many people feel like they've lost a part of themselves. You go from being Susan from HR to just Susan. And honestly, that can feel like a huge drop, even if you're grateful to be done with the hustle. This identity shift catches a lot of people off guard, especially in cultures like ours that tend to tie a person's values so tightly to what they produce. If you're not busy, if you're not earning, if you're not constantly doing something, society kind of whispers, you're not contributing. But let me offer you a different take. Retirement isn't an ending, it's an unwrapping. You're not less of yourself, you're just shedding a role you wore for a long time. And underneath that, there's still you. Maybe even more of you than ever. Of course, it's not easy. Change never is. But it's also not a sign of weakness to feel disoriented or sad during this transition. It's a sign you cared about the life you were living. That it meant something. And now, you're figuring out what comes next. Here's the silver lining: once you recognize this shift for what it is, you can begin to rebuild your life in a way that's more personal, more meaningful, and on your terms. Because yes, the title is gone. But the value you bring, the stories you've lived, the lessons you've learned, those don't retire. Ever. Let me tell you about someone who might remind you of someone you know, maybe even a little bit of yourself. His name is George. He's 67 years old, lives in a quiet town in Minnesota. For over 40 years, George worked as a mail carrier. And not just any mail carrier, he was the guy. You know the kind. Rain, snow, heat wave, blizzard. George was out there every day, walking his route with the same steady pace, the same blue satchel over his shoulder, nodding hello to neighbors, waving to kids on their bikes, even giving biscuits to the local dogs who came running when they heard the squeak of his cartwheels. He didn't just deliver mail, he delivered presents. He was a familiar face, a part of the rhythm of that neighborhood. Everyone knew George, and George knew everyone. Every back gate shortcut, every last name on every mailbox, even which homes would leave out a thermos of hot cocoa in the winter. So when retirement came, there was a celebration. His co-workers threw him a big party, complete with a banner and cake. The neighborhood pooled together to give him a framed map of his route, marked with little pins for each family he'd served. There were hugs, speeches, even a few teary toasts. And then came the stillness. George told a friend that the first month of retirement felt like a vacation. He slept in, watched some old westerns, caught up on his reading. It was nice. Peaceful, even. But by the third month, something shifted. He stopped getting up early. Skipped breakfast more often than not. TV stayed on most of the day, but he couldn't tell you what was playing. The days started to blur together, not in a relaxing way, but in a heavy, gray kind of way. He wasn't in physical pain. In fact, his knees felt better than ever, but he said something that really stuck with me. I feel like I don't matter anymore. And if you've ever felt that, or even something close to it, you know how quietly painful that can be. It's not about wanting attention. It's about wanting to feel useful. To feel seen. Thankfully, George had someone in his corner, his daughter. She saw what was happening and gently nudged him to try something new. She told him about a local elementary school where they were looking for volunteers to read to second graders once a week. Just an hour or two. Nothing big. At first, George brushed it off. What do I know about kids? He joked. All I've ever delivered are letters and packages. But she kept asking, and eventually, maybe out of love for her, maybe out of curiosity, George agreed to give it a shot. That first day, he walked into the classroom with a nervous smile and a worn-out copy of Charlotte's Web. He read for about 30 minutes. The kids listened. They laughed at the funny parts. One of them even asked if he'd come back tomorrow. Something in George lit up that day. They didn't care that I was retired, he told me. They just wanted stories. So he went back the next week. Then the week after that. And pretty soon, once a week turned into twice. Then 3 times. He didn't just read, he started to connect. He'd help some of the boys who didn't have dads at home. He showed one how to tie a tie for picture day. Another, how to fix the chain on his bike. He started looking forward to his mornings again. Picking out books the night before. Laying out his clothes like he used to for work. Packing snacks for the kids. Asking questions. Listening. He didn't go back to a job, he moved forward into purpose. That, right there, that's the key. George didn't try to replicate his old life. He didn't try to stay busy just for the sake of it. He found something new that made him feel useful, connected, and alive. And it didn't come with a paycheck or a title, it came from being present. You don't have to become a full-time volunteer to find what George found. But his story reminds us that purpose doesn't retire when we do. It just shows up in different places. Sometimes, it's in a classroom full of second graders. Other times, it's in a community garden, a local shelter, a phone call to an old friend. The important thing is not what you do, it's why you do it. Because even when the world goes quiet, there are still people who need your voice. Alright, let's dive into some of the science behind all of this. It turns out that having a sense of purpose isn't just something that feels good, it's actually incredibly good for you, especially as we age. Let me share a few things that researchers have uncovered in some pretty eye-opening studies. First, did you know that Harvard researchers have found a direct link between having a strong sense of purpose and healthy aging? It's not just about staying active or eating the right foods, it's about having a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And it turns out, this sense of purpose can even impact your health in some pretty remarkable ways. A 2019 study from the University of Michigan looked at older adults and found that those with a strong sense of purpose had 2.4 times lower risk of developing Alzheimer's, 30% lower risk of having a stroke, and they were more likely to maintain their mobility and independence over time. Pretty wild, right? But here's the thing, when we talk about purpose, we're not talking about some grand, earth-shattering goal. You don't have to go out and write a bestseller or start the next big tech company. Purpose can be much simpler than that. It's about finding something that gives you direction, something that makes you feel like your life still matters, even after retirement. For a lot of people, this sense of purpose often shows up in the form of helping others. Whether it's through volunteering, mentoring, or just lending a hand to a neighbor, helping others can fill our hearts with meaning. It's not about doing it for praise or recognition, it's about knowing you've made a positive difference. Creating. Maybe you've always had a passion for art, writing, or even gardening. These outlets let you express yourself, keep your mind sharp, and even find new ways to connect with the world. Learning. If you've always been a curious person, retirement can be a great time to explore new interests or pick up a hobby you never had time for before. Learning something new keeps your brain active and gives you a sense of accomplishment. Connecting. It's easy to feel disconnected after retirement, especially if you don't have the daily routine of work. But reaching out to old friends, joining social groups, or even just making a point to check in on loved ones can help rekindle those meaningful connections. Sharing wisdom. This one's a big one. We all accumulate so much life experience over the years, stories, lessons, advice, and sharing that with younger generations or anyone who's willing to listen can feel deeply fulfilling. So let me ask you something personal, what made you feel useful before you retired? Was it helping a coworker solve a problem? Was it having a team to lead or a project to complete? And when you think about it, is there a way to bring some piece of that sense of purpose into your life now, without the pressure of a paycheck or a boss breathing down your neck? It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to look the same as it did when you were working. But just having that reason to get up, even on days when you might not feel like it, can make all the difference. In fact, there's something deeply rewarding about knowing that your time still has value. Whether that means helping a local organization, starting a small creative project, or just showing up for someone who needs a friend, these small acts of purpose have a huge impact on your overall health and happiness. So, think about it. What's the one thing, big or small, that makes you feel like you're contributing? It's never too late to find your new mission, and when you do, you'll likely notice that the days feel fuller, richer, and a lot more exciting. Let's face it, one of the biggest surprises after retirement is the sudden shift in social interaction. One day, you're surrounded by co-workers, chatting by the coffee machine, cracking jokes, and sharing stories in the break room. Then, the next day, you're not. No more casual check-ins, no more team meetings, and certainly no more spontaneous happy hours. It can feel like you've been quietly erased from the social map. And I get it, that's hard. It's easy to think that you've lost your place in the world when you no longer have that built-in social structure that work provided. You may feel like you're on the outside, watching life go on without you. But here's the thing, connection isn't gone. It just needs to be rebuilt. I know it can feel daunting. But this is actually an amazing opportunity. Now that you're not tied to a 9-to-5, you have the freedom to choose who you connect with, and how you want to show up in the world. You're no longer restricted to a work environment where connections are often circumstantial. Now, you have the power to curate your social life based on your interests and values. Let me tell you about Marcia, a retired nurse from Arizona. After working in the nursing field for 35 years, her life had revolved around night shifts, patient care, and the camaraderie of the hospital staff. The friendships she had made over the years were deep and meaningful. They were her second family. But when Marcia retired, those connections started to fade. Her son lived in another state, and most of her friends were still working. She felt isolated, unsure of where to turn. Instead of retreating into loneliness, Marcia decided to take action. She joined a local hiking club specifically for retirees. At first, she thought it would just be a way to stay active and get some steps in, but as she went on more hikes, something unexpected happened. She started forming friendships with the other members. They didn't just hike, they shared stories, traded recipes, and exchanged book recommendations. Over time, they celebrated birthdays together, went on group outings, and even took a road trip to Utah. I didn't think I could make new friends at 68, Marcia told me, with a smile in her voice. But I did, and they are some of the most honest and open friendships I've ever had. Isn't that a beautiful story? Marcia's journey shows that it's never too late to form meaningful connections, even when you feel like the social world has left you behind. It just takes a little courage and the willingness to step outside your comfort zone. So, how can you start building your own tribe? Here are some practical ideas to help you get started. 1. Join a local community center or senior group. Many towns offer free or low-cost activities for retirees, whether it's fitness classes, arts and crafts, or social events. This is a great way to meet people who are in the same boat as you. 2. Take a class at a local college or library. Whether it's an art class, writing workshop, or even a tech course, learning something new is a fantastic way to stimulate your mind and meet like-minded people. 3. Attend meetups or online forums. Websites like meetup.com make it easy to find groups based on your interests, whether it's a walking group, a book club, or a language exchange. There are communities for everything these days. 4. Start a coffee morning in your neighborhood. One woman in Ohio found a simple but effective way to combat loneliness. She posted a flyer on her street that read, "Retired and want to chat over coffee? Meet on my porch Fridays at 10. She now has a regular group of 7 neighbors who gather every week to chat over coffee. Remember, connection doesn't always come knocking on your door. Sometimes, you have to invite it in. It's easy to wait for others to reach out, but the truth is that you can take the first step. Whether it's starting a regular social gathering, reaching out to an old friend, or joining a group that aligns with your interests, you have the power to create the connections you need. Here's the key: don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Yes, it can feel awkward at first, and yes, it might take a little time to find the right group of people. But if you keep trying, I promise you'll find your tribe, people who support you, care for you, and who you'll genuinely enjoy spending time with. The world is full of wonderful people just waiting for someone like you to reach out and say, "Hey, let's get together." And while it might take a little time, the reward of true connection is worth every bit of effort. You're not alone in this journey. There's an entire world out there, full of people just waiting to connect. Go out and find them. A purpose-filled life isn't about grand gestures. It's about how you spend your ordinary days. Let's be real, when your schedule is wide open, it can feel like you're floating. You've spent years following a structured routine, and then one day, it's all gone. No more meetings. No more deadlines. No more set plans. At first, it might feel like freedom, but after a while, that freedom can start to feel empty. You might find yourself stuck in habits that don't really nourish you. Maybe you're spending hours mindlessly flipping through TV channels or scrolling through social media without even realizing how much time is passing. Or maybe, out of sheer boredom, you start napping more than you ever have. But here's the good news: it doesn't have to stay that way. You have the power to design your days in a way that brings meaning, joy, and even a little excitement. And it doesn't have to be anything complicated or elaborate. The key is to find small daily acts of purpose, the things that keep you connected to your sense of self and the world around you. I'm going to share a simple but powerful idea for a daily routine that can help you infuse purpose into your life. Let's call it the 3-pillar daily purpose routine. Here's the basic idea: each day, try to include these 3 types of activities. One thing for your body. This could be something as simple as a walk around the block, some gentle stretching, yoga, or even gardening. The idea is to get your body moving in a way that feels good, not forced. It doesn't have to be an hour-long workout or an intense session at the gym. It's about honoring your body's needs and getting into the habit of moving regularly. For example, I've heard so many people say they never had time to exercise while they were working. And now that they are retired, they realize that they actually have more time, but they are not sure where to start. A walk in the morning with a cup of coffee in hand, or a little time in the garden pulling weeds and planting flowers, these are simple but powerful ways to keep your body in motion without feeling like you have to work out in a traditional sense. 1 thing for your mind. Next, include something that stimulates your mind. It could be as simple as solving a crossword puzzle, reading a good book, journaling your thoughts, or learning something new. The brain thrives on novelty, and retirement is the perfect time to explore interests and hobbies you might not have had time for before. You've probably heard people say they want to learn a new language, or maybe you've always wanted to take up painting or music. Why not start now? One of the joys of retirement is the freedom to explore things that have always intrigued you without the pressure of a packed schedule. And you don't have to go to a class to learn something new. The internet is a treasure trove of free resources for virtually anything. Whether it's watching documentary videos, reading articles, or simply trying something creative, this mental stimulation will not only keep your mind sharp but also give you a sense of accomplishment. 3. One thing for your heart. This is where connection comes in. Whether it's picking up the phone to call a friend, writing a letter to a family member, volunteering at a local organization, or even helping a neighbor with something small, this is about doing something that feeds your heart and gives you that warm feeling of making a difference. Helping others is a huge part of finding purpose. And the best part is, it doesn't have to be anything big or formal. Let me introduce you to Frank. He's 72 and retired from a high-pressure corporate job. For months after retiring, Frank felt lost. He didn't know what to do with his time, and his routine was aimless. Then, he decided to create a new morning routine for himself. He started waking up early, around 7 a.m., and taking a walk around his neighborhood. After that, he spent a little time journaling, jotting down his thoughts, reflections, and even dreams. He's always loved history, but he never had time to dive into it while he was working. So, after journaling, Frank read about historical events that intrigued him. By 11 a.m., Frank felt like his day already had purpose. He wasn't running around trying to fill his time with random distractions. Instead, he had a solid routine that nurtured his body, his mind, and his heart. And when I asked him how he felt about it, he smiled and said, "It's not about being busy. It's about feeling alive." What I love about Frank's story is that he didn't try to reinvent himself. He didn't need to take on some huge, complex project. Instead, he focused on the small, everyday acts that brought him joy and fulfillment. His new routine wasn't about impressing anyone or achieving a big goal. It was about doing things that made him feel engaged and connected with his own life. The beauty of purpose is that it's not loud. It's not about flashy, attention-grabbing achievements. Sometimes, it's quiet. Sometimes, it whispers in the simple things like feeding the birds in your backyard, tending to a plant you've just started growing, or cooking a meal for a neighbor who could use a little company. These daily acts of kindness, self-care, and curiosity can add up to something truly meaningful. It's easy to feel like purpose has to be a huge, life-changing thing, something that's visible and impressive. But in reality, purpose is often found in the small, consistent actions that make up your day. And as you start to build a routine that includes these 3 pillars, you'll likely notice a shift in your mindset. Your days will feel more intentional. You'll start to feel more grounded, and even the ordinary moments will have a sense of meaning attached to them. Remember, you don't need to change everything at once. Small changes can have a huge impact. So, today, think about what you can do for your body, mind, and heart. It could be as simple as taking a walk, reading a chapter of a book, or calling a friend to check in. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Purpose isn't loud. It's not a big, dramatic event. Sometimes, it whispers in the everyday moments. And when you listen, you'll realize that life after retirement can be filled with purpose, joy, and a renewed sense of self. You just have to start creating it. When you think about it, many retirees underestimate one of their greatest assets: life experience. You've spent decades raising families, managing homes, building careers, and surviving the ups and downs that come with life. Along the way, you've learned countless lessons that can't be found in books or taught in classrooms. And those lessons, that wealth of wisdom, are needed in the world now more than ever. In fact, in many cultures, elders have always been seen as the cornerstone of their communities. They are the ones people turn to for advice, guidance, and stories of days gone by. They've earned their role as mentors, storytellers, and advisors. And I think it's safe to say that, even though we live in a fast-paced, modern world, that role is still deeply relevant today. There's so much that younger generations can learn from the experiences and perspectives of those who have lived longer and seen more. The thing is, it's easy to overlook your own potential to give back, especially when you're adjusting to life after retirement. You might feel like you don't have the same responsibilities you once did, or maybe you're not sure where you fit in anymore. But what if I told you that the very things you might think are behind you, your stories, your experiences, your lessons, are some of the most valuable things you have to offer? Let me share a story with you about Anita, a 74-year-old woman who lives in a multi-generational apartment complex in Los Angeles. Anita, like so many of us, didn't want to be a passive observer in her community. She wanted to make a difference, to stay connected, and to share what she knew. Every Saturday morning, Anita hosts a grandma circle in the courtyard of her building. Parents bring their kids to the circle, and Anita takes them under her wing. She shares folk stories from her childhood in Mississippi, teaches the children simple crafts, and even helps with homework. There's no payment involved, no official organization, and no formal title. She's simply doing what feels right, giving back in a way that's authentic to her. What's amazing is that Anita has become a beloved figure in her building, someone everyone looks forward to seeing every weekend. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said, "I don't have to be the boss anymore. But I still get to be someone who matters." And that's the key, right? You don't need a title to be valuable. You don't need to be a CEO or a leader of a nonprofit to have an impact. What you need is to show up with your time, your attention, and your care. That's where the magic happens. It doesn't have to be anything grand or extravagant. Sometimes, the simplest actions can create ripples of positive change. Sharing your story with others, offering a listening ear to a neighbor, teaching a new skill, these are the things that matter. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present. You've lived through so much. You've faced challenges, made mistakes, and come out stronger on the other side. There's so much knowledge embedded in your experiences, and younger generations can benefit from that. Whether it's offering advice on relationships, managing finances, or navigating the ups and downs of life, your perspective can make a real difference. And it's not just the younger generations who benefit. Giving back has a way of filling you up too. Helping others brings a sense of fulfillment, a reminder that you still matter and that you have something important to offer. It can reignite that sense of purpose that may have faded when you first retired. The act of giving is often a two-way street, and by giving back, you're also giving yourself a renewed sense of connection to the world around you. So, think about the small ways you can share your knowledge and experiences with others. Maybe there's a local school or community center where you could volunteer, or a neighbor who might appreciate some guidance. Maybe you could offer to babysit your grandkids or help a younger friend with something they are struggling with. There's no wrong way to share what you know. The world today might be different from the one you grew up in, but the need for wisdom, kindness, and connection remains the same. And as you step into this next chapter of life, don't forget that you have something incredibly valuable to offer. You've got the experience. You've got the stories. You've got the lessons learned. And all of that can make a real difference in the lives of those around you. The power of elders in society is not something that's ever going to go out of style. It's something that is needed, now more than ever. Let's bring everything full circle. Retirement doesn't mean you're stepping out of life. It means you finally have the freedom to step into the life you choose. It's easy to focus on what's been lost, structure, career, identity, but what if we shifted the lens? What if this phase is about rediscovery? discovering passions you didn't have time for, building deeper, more intentional relationships, contributing your wisdom to the world in new ways. If your life was a book, retirement isn't the final chapter. It's the start of volume 2. Maybe that volume includes mentoring. Maybe it includes painting, or travel, or baking banana bread for the church picnic. Maybe it's just more phone calls to your grandkids. Whatever it looks like, it matters. And so do you. If this video struck a chord with you, or if it brought to mind someone in your life who's recently retired and might be navigating these changes, I'd love for you to share it with them. Sometimes, a little encouragement is all it takes to help someone see that the next chapter of their life can be just as meaningful, if not more, than the ones that came before. And hey, if you've already found your purpose after retirement, that thing that makes you feel alive, connected, and engaged, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read right now. We're all in this together, and there's so much value in sharing our experiences and lifting each other up. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to Elderly Care, where we truly believe that aging isn't about fading away, it's about thriving, growing, and continuing to make an impact. Every chapter of life brings new opportunities, and I'm so excited for you to embrace what's ahead. Thank you for being here with us today. Remember, your next chapter starts now, and it's going to be incredible.